science fiction is full, as is mystery, of plot arcs that are basically the American monomyth. The hero rides into town. The hero possesses special skills that are necessary to address the problem, usually violent skills. The hero uses those skills, and then at the end the hero has to leave, because the skills that make the hero useful to solve the problems are not societally acceptable. They also make this person someone you do not want next door, and so it is crucial that the hero leaves. This is why PIs move in and out of the society, but they live in an outsider society. This is why so many heroes move in and then leave at the end. And I wanted to play with that a little bit, because even though I was working in that sort of thematic or structural genre, I wanted to play with it. And so the most interesting question about an American monomyth character is what happens when that character has to stay or decides to stay. And this was the perfect avenue, because in the backstory of the book there's a set of interwoven chapters talking about how John went from being a mentally challenged 16-year-old with the intelligence of a 5-year-old. He was healed by his empathic healer sister, and made quite special. How he became the person he is, how he was trained to kill. And so there's his story, the child soldiers, and then there comes a point where he's there, he's done, and they say, bye, leave, and he realizes he can't. That this is really spoken to him, and so he asks to stay. And they say to him quite correctly, and this was another problem for me structurally, you do not have the training to be a counselor to help these children. Because you can't write a story where you just suddenly give somebody special abilities they didn't have, I believe. You can't just make shit up that isn't internally consistent, and that isn't what his skill is, or he'd be better off himself. And so he agrees to do whatever they need, janitorial work, guard duty, whatever, which is what he ends up doing. He ends up cleaning and walking patrol. But he wants to stay and help. It turns out, of course, that his special skills do help, and eventually at the end of the book he leaves, but I got to play with the American monomyth structure, keep him there, while in the course of the book showing that some of the issues and challenges in rehabilitating and reintegrating the child soldiers. And he has a special connection to these kids and ends up talking with them, ends up doing it. There's actually a pivotal chapter, thematically probably the high point, but it's only about 2/3 of the way through, where one of the children dies, and he interrupts the eulogy and talks to the children directly about what really happened, and the counselors don't like it. He's breaking a lot of rules, but he is the one among them who has been that, and so that was what he could bring. So it was a bit of a structural, literary mashup, because hey, why not? And then the different threads.
Well, the Shane, I'm thinking of Shane. I'm thinking of Jack.
Sure, of course, that's the classic.
And Shane is interesting because it was not published as a YA novel, but it's a YA novel now. It's like all these retrofitted YA novels, Lord of the Flies and Catcher in the Rye. The story you just described, outside of the vagaries of publishing, because Baen doesn't do this, why isn't it a YA?
Well, I don't know. It's a pretty dark book. There are no curse words in this particular series. Most of what I write outside this novel series, you kind of need to appreciate all the words, or you won't like it. But in this book, I haven't. But it is a very dark series, and I think maybe it could be a YA. I don't know, but that certainly isn't what Baen did. I think it's a little too dark for that. I think it's more dealing with the adult side. What I've found in reader mail and everywhere else is that the audience that it's spoken to a lot are people who have had abuses and traumas in their past. So I've gotten mail about this from cops, from trauma workers, from vets, from abused children, from raped women, because part of the book is about the fact that you can't talk about this shit.
Yeah.
That the world does not want you to talk about it. And part of what I'm trying to do in the blog entries and the afterword of the book and in the book is say that's bullshit. Yes, you can. And if society doesn't want to hear what you went through, then that's their problem. The world needs to hear, because maybe then we would stop allowing this shit. Maybe if we allowed our discomfort to increase a little bit, we would be more vigilant, we would listen more to the victims, we would help create structures that would stop some of it, and if nothing else, we would appreciate those who pay those prices. So.
Well, you say the American monomyth, and I mean, I can see what you're talking about in terms of the Western or in terms of the James Fenimore Cooper or a lot. But does this carry into science fiction also? I guess it does.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Most science fiction heroes, particularly series heroes, but in many books, they got to leave at the end because the actions that they take, the things they're willing to do, are things that taint them.
Right.
You know, violence is a fundamentally soul-scorching thing. I mean, when you commit acts of violence, it changes you. And if you haven't ever committed violence, you know, it does. You do things, and then you remember them, and they're always with you. And you know, I have another one of the pieces I didn't read because it's a bit rougher. One of the lessons involved a time that I led a group of people to beat up two guys who had hurt one of ours. I was 12 years old, and that night when I was 12 years old, I went home and I picked pieces of their face out of my knuckles, which it turns out you get pieces of cartilage when you hit somebody enough times. And that's not a good thing. I'm not trying to defend it. In the same circumstances, with the same training that I had, I would have done it again because they picked on one of mine, and you don't get to fucking pick on one of mine, right? That's the way that is. But those things that taint you make you not fit well in society, and science fiction is full of that. Whether it's in the literature, in the movies, anywhere, heroes need to leave. They need to hang with their own type. You know, it doesn't matter. Once you've done a certain class of things, you need to not be everywhere. Joss Whedon's Serenity, okay, relatively lighthearted romp on certain areas, not always, right? But in that movie, it is the instinctual understanding of the writers that those people can't just settle down and raise kids, right? That's not who they are, and that's. It doesn't matter where you look. I think in the literature, yes, people need to come and go.
We have a historical novelist in our midst. Is this? You think this is true historically? Is this a theme in world literature as well, or is this an American?
Literature or history?
The literature that comes out of history, not history itself.
Yeah, I think so. I think, as he says, that heroic deeds place you outside the normal range of human endeavor. That you see this all the time in the westerns, where the ranchers or the homesteaders are really glad to see the guy come in and blow away the thing, but then they want him to leave and go over the